All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Moonhawk Studios Presents, and I am your host, Mac Paladin. With me in the studio, as always, are my good friends, Adam.
Hello?
We have a Kevin in the house.
Greetings and salutations.
Patty fans kicking it old school.
The voices are still in my head. Help.
The Golix is actually participating in the old school.
Well, as much as headaches allow.
Right. And of course,
Sorry.
And of course, the writer of our theme song, Varias.
Hi, everyone.
All right, we have a
I was
great.
going to say something. Sorry, I was going to say whoever said about the voices in their head, I was going to take your headphones off then.
No, you can't make me.
Okay. Well, allegedly, we have a great show for you tonight, and we're going to work on making that a reality momentarily. But let's first start with the news. Adam, what's cooking with you?
Let's see. Lots of things this week. Starting off, took my kitty to the vet on Friday for his annual checkup. And, yeah. Let's see. First off, he had fleas. So, I'm like, well, what happens when you run out of medicine? Like, there's, he has some stopgap medicine applied to him. That seems to be working well enough. But, it's going to be a bit of time before his, proper medicine gets here. Also, he was a bit underweight. So, on the suspicion of parasites, he's been given dewormer. Like,
Oof.
yeah, like the hardest part is feeding the pill to him.
Yeah, that's the number one reason for cats to be underweight. The next one is just doesn't eat enough.
Trust me, he's been eating. That's why we suspect parasite. Yeah. He certainly has no. Believe me, he certainly has no lack of appetite. So. Yeah, I mean, he's already taken his first pill. His second pill is about 2.5 weeks. Like, but otherwise, he's doing fine for a cat his age, about 15 years old. So yeah, he's doing well enough. And to myself, I've mentioned this on the show before, but I've been dealing with this, what they call a neck mass. That is when a growth shows up on your neck.
Yeah, like a lymph node, you said.
Oh, I thought that was a weird Catholic thing.
Yeah, I'm like,
we apologize for that, ladies and
That
gentlemen.
is a lot of...
Sorry.
Wow.
That was interestingly timed levity.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, went
Moving
to the
on.
urgent care today. The examination came up inconclusive. Because, well, it's because not because of anything nefarious or malignant, at least at this stage. Like, it's more. There are a lot of things that grow from your neck. Like more than you'd ever expect or think about. But like I am in amazement at this world of neck masses, and that's why like a surface exam didn't real. Only thing that was really determined that it's not thyroid based, because this is a lateral mass and not a throatal mass or whatever they call a central mass. It's to the side, not the front.
Okay.
Like I said, there are genres of this.
Look at that! It's a goiter. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, point is, they prescribed me an ultrasound with my primary care physician. Like, thing is, I hadn't quite gotten that set up because of some insurance issues I mentioned last week that I wasn't happy about. But but thankfully I got those cleared up, which is why I was able to use my insurance today, because I found out the source problem there. Turns out my insurance card was out of date, and nobody sent me a new insurance card. Like,
It's weird.
Thankfully I was able to get a hold of the relevant information so that my insurance could be accessed for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I've got a primary care physician now. I'm seeing him tomorrow. Not sure if he's going to do the ultrasound. We'll see what happens there. But based off of what the doctor I saw today, I'm not thinking it's cancer. Like, I can't say 100%. But it's like, malignant tumors have a lot of side effects. Sore throat, fevers, weight loss. Trust me, none of that.
So could just be like a swollen lymph node or something.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, it could be a cyst. It could be a bronchial, a collapse infection or something like that. Once again, it could be a benign tumor. I suppose the other issue is in terms of drainage. That might be a problem because it's the neck, and there's a lot of important bits in there.
Yeah.
So
typically.
Yeah.
Don't know if I will need an operation on it, but if that occurs, that's an outpatient thing for where it is. So I'm not looking at full emergency room.
Or not like me, who was out for a few months.
Yeah. I it'd be a day recovery at most. So, but point is, I am, I got this thing. I'm taking care of it. And in case anyone's worried, it's like, I'm seeing doctors and shit. So, I don't think this is going to be too much of an issue, but we'll see what happens. More updates in the future, I guess.
Basically, stay tuned.
Anyway, that's my news.
All right. Kevin, what's cooking?
Well, other than me adding more days to my work schedule, nothing at my local AMC, nothing really much going on down here. So, next.
All right, Petty Fan.
Overall, quiet week. Trying to think if there's anything really of note. Like tomorrow, I see the dentist. Hopefully, get some more of my teeth fixed. And just been kind of playing Ninja Gaiden Sigma because it just came to Game Pass, and I'm kind of waiting for Sonic Origins to unlock. So, woo, video games.
Neat. All right. Galax, what's cooking?
Not too much. I finally beat the main story of Super Robot Wars 30, so I'm taking a little bit of a break from that, I suppose, for playing other games. Like right now I'm playing Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I already put in some time on the game we're reviewing this week. G-Generation weekend streams are going pretty well. We figured out how to do one of the things that we were having some trouble with.
Now we get to start a whole new scenario.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it's just like on the second halves of the scenarios, those are more story of the game, the scene scenarios based on, and that's why they don't let you deploy people for those, but we'll see.
That's annoying that they're just not automatically there.
Well, but they might have wanted you to not have non-canon things for more important plot segments, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah. Well, I suspect in the later scenarios they'll be less regimented.
Well, we'll see. It'll depend. Certainly, for when we get to the Battle of Abawaku, you could certainly have as many goddamn people there as you want.
Indeed.
So we'll see. I finally got a chance to try out my the deck I made for Digimon card game, so that was nice. Was having a hard time getting together with my friend because of various family things and other scheduling things. And I tried to play with Pettyfan online, but apparently we're having trouble connecting with Tabletop Simulator, so yeah, we're trying to figure out what's up with that. If you're a genius of Tabletop Simulator, let me know. And I think that's about all I got.
All right, Brias.
So I've got an MRI next Thursday.
All these damn medical procedures.
Yeah, so I got that. I got physical therapy next Tuesday. I start vestibular therapy at the end of July. I'm being recessed for my disability, which is going to be a very slow process. So, it is what it is.
Is this
Ultimately,
related
at
to
the
the
end-
recent things, or?
No.
No. It has to do with a lot of the issues that I had in regards to my falls and everything.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, all of that. I mean, so it all kind of links back to my original diagnosis, which was 18 years ago. So, I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there were some discrepancies with that original diagnosis. So, in theory, this reevaluation will
Yeah,
increase.
we can do a lot.
Whoa,
Wow, I don't know what's going on there.
Adam, we got a lot of crosstalk from you, bud.
Oh, how about now?
Okay.
That's
It's better
better.
now.
As I was saying, a lot of these reevaluations hopefully will be to the positive.
That's the hope, yes. Being able to get that situated. I also went and had an eye exam the other day, so yeah, I'm going to be able to get some new glasses. And of course, I spent a few hours with the boyfriend today, hanging out and doing.
I didn't hear any of that. Hanging out and doing, and then it just cut.
Just hanging out and everything. I don't know why it cut. That's weird.
We increased the power of the internet.
Do you want me to switch server location to see if that
So
helps?
yeah, I don't know. That was just but yeah. So I got a late start today because I was kind of feeling yuck. So
Yeah. All right.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm finally back to streaming starting this week, and I'm working on getting the rest of my stuff together so I can get back to work on the whole.
And you may want to talk a little bit about what we found for the lavenders, because you're the one who actually understands it. I'm just sitting here going,
Yeah.
"Durr."
Yeah, it's a very neat program add-on for Blender called Simple Sci-Fi Cityscapes, and or Simple Sci-Fi, but I'm using a thing called Flex, which is a big part of it, which allows you to, like, using random seeds, generate dynamic cityscapes. So that's kind of cool. I've got a big cityscape that we're using to set up for some lavender-based backgrounds now, but I can also use it to create like trench run style artwork for like if we do spaceship up close to space stations, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff, because one of the decisions that I made was that we pushed this series. It's not 15 minutes in the future. It's about a century from when we originally started it in 2007, and so it takes place in 2107. And I'm like, okay, given all the things that I did with this thing, I feel like it should be more futuristic than it is. So getting a dynamically generated city that we will then find modern day landmarks to insert into will make this a lot more authentic, I guess is a good word. You could respond to that if you want.
I mean, I don't quite know what else to say to that.
Yeah,
So
you could have just agreed with me or said, "Nah, Mac, you're totally all wet. You're full of shit. I don't know what you're talking about."
well, I mean, but no, yeah. So I've generated using multiple different types of structures. I've managed to create a pretty unique cityscape that looks pretty good. With lighting and things, I've been setting up lighting and sky stuff. So the buildings actually have lights and everything. So I was like, all right, that's really cool. So we got like actual like, building lights, so that it actually looks like we've got people occupying these buildings in their space.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I've seen some preliminary stuff on it, and it looks really slick. And even though we've been working with this now for 2 days, and I picked it up last week, and she looked at it on a preliminary basis. Apparently, the learning curve was not extreme.
No.
Now, I will say this on Veria's behalf, and that is that she has an uncanny ability to be a quick study with anything involving, especially
just about
art
anything.
especially art generating programs. But when
that's my. I say, go ahead.
That's your superpower.
Right, which I didn't realize was a superpower until Mac pointed out that not everyone can do that. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like
I just thought that was the thing everybody could do.
Like she spent like almost a year trying to teach me After Effects, which apparently you picked up in like a couple of months.
Yeah, I started with After Effects and started just like making stuff within like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Designing my own visual effects and everything.
I said, well, how do you feel about Blender? And it's like, well, I haven't really done a whole lot of work in that, but give me a couple hours and watch some videos, and I'll let you know.
Well, I mean, I went from what 2 weeks? I went from like nothing to making VTube avatars with custom parts and scripts.
Yeah, and then you're over here going, okay, now I got to move this node over here, and it's like, oh my god, working with nodes. It's like I couldn't do flowcharting 20 years ago. There's no fucking way I'm gonna do nodes now.
Right.
I'm just like, basically nodes are mechanical, are electronic versions of mechanical components that make shit work in a 3D application.
And then in Blender I use nodes for like what I was working on last night when Matt came over, saw that I had this like massive map of nodes. I was creating a starry sky using nodes as an internal like projection inside a sphere. And then adding dynamic clouds and a moon and all this other stuff, and I'm just sitting here like constantly connecting all these new node sections and then like chaining them all together for a single output.
Yeah, but I think people are going to be quite surprised when we complete season 1 of this show, because before we just used static comic artwork that we had pulled from the original webcomic, and then Act 3 had no such thing attached.
Right, so it's all brand new custom art leaning toward the actual style we're working in.
Yeah, and I spent 6 months rebuilding my command center, trying to get a functional tablet, which once again I cannot thank my fan, the Uncola Man, enough for sending me the fundage so I could get this XP Pen tablet monitor. I cannot brain around an actual tablet. I have a 6x8 bamboo tablet behind me. I also have a 6x8 Intuos 4 that I have had for over a decade, and aside from the occasional draw a stick figure and send it to one of my artists that I'm working with, they are basically a paperweight on my desk. A very expensive paperweight. So that's what we've been doing. Is I purchased a couple of elements from the Blender store that basically
Yeah.
allows us to work on this show.
Right, and it came out to what, like $22?
Yeah, I mean, considering the fact that with Starship Moonhawk, we're going bananas with full live 2D and Cinema 4D.
I mean, and then all the time I spent building the model of the Moonhawk, and then the Achilles, and
now building
The
virtual sets.
yeah, I've been building the bridge for the Moonhawk in 3D, and we've got the what's it called, shuttle. I can't remember what you call
The
them.
Ganymede class shuttle, yes.
Ganymede, thank you. I couldn't remember. I was going to say like arch nemesis,
Well, all the
Greek Trojan horse.
Okay, so in Star Trek they had this thing to where each starship had its own theme for their shuttle names.
Mm-hmm.
So the original Enterprise shuttles were all named after famous astronomers. The Enterprise D's shuttlecraft were typically named after philosophers. And so on and so forth. So it's like, you've got Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, so on and so forth for the original Enterprise. And so it's just like a thing. So the Ganymede class shuttle, all the shuttles also have names, which we will reveal, which will have a Star Trek-esque theme for each starship that has them. So, because it's bad luck to have a sailing vessel that does not have a name. That's an old maritime tradition. So that's what we're working on this week, and I'm very pleased with it because we seem to be making progress, and a lot of this stuff was put on hold because of various financial setbacks and things that were just keeping me go bonkers because right now I'm the financial anchor for all of this stuff, and if I'm not paying the bills, all this stuff tends to suffer. So very excited about that, and we're finally moving forward with the series. And when people see what we do with episodes 8, 9, and 10, which are which is the penultimate which is the ultimate segment of the first season of the Lavenders, they're gonna be like, "Wow, why didn't you do this with all of it?" And then I will punch them in the throat. Because it would not have been possible to do it with all of it.
Right, and I mean, a lot's been like an adaptation, shift, and change as we've figured out what works better over time.
Yep, but this will be a sneak preview of what we intend to do with season 2. So, all right, I think that covers it for the news. Yes.
Yes.
All right. So moving on to the main part of the show, of course, our guest this week is new to me, and so I will lead in by saying welcoming Kris Asick of Pixelmusment and Ancient DOS Games to the program. Kris, welcome to the program at last.
Hello.
All right, so tell us who you are and what you're all about. Let's get started that way.
Okay, well, my name is Kris. My last name's actually pronounced Asick.
Oh.
Nobody ever gets it right the first time, so I don't care about it anymore.
It's a programming thing. Asick is actually anyway.
Also, it's a brand of shoes, I believe. I have no relation to any of that, though. But anyway, so
set the record straight. Set the record straight.
It's always going to be wobbly. But so I do for the past how long has it been now? 12 years? Yeah, 12 years. I've been doing a show called Ancient DOS Games, and it's basically just it. I originally tried to start Ancient DOS Games 14 years ago, back on what was that place called? Game Trailers. Anybody remember that site?
Yes,
I do.
I remember that largely because of Yahtzee.
Yeah, it's still around too, believe it or not.
Yahtzee's the escapist. The nerd was on game trailers.
Was okay.
Yeah,
See,
games. Because
I mean, Yahtzee did do
Yeah.
some things not on The Escapist before he was on The Escapist, but...
Yeah, but he was never on game trailers.
Okay. No, I believe you.
Well, game trailers had this thing for users to create their own content. And so I tried to make a show with my heavily underpowered Windows 98 machine
Oof.
in 2008
Ouch.
called Ancient DOS Games. And I made a grand total of 2 episodes using really finicky software that I would not wish upon my worst enemies to use. And I think a grand total of maybe 7 people watched that initial attempt. So yeah, that didn't go so well. So after the second episode, I was like, this is ridiculous trying to do this. So I just set it aside. And then come 2010, I'm working a call center job, and one particular month, right at the start of the month, April 2010, I lose my voice.
Oh damn!
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like some kind of because it's call center jobs, so you're talking all day long, pretty much. And I think I just some kind of bronchitis or something or whatever. The thing is, I could barely speak. So during this time, I'm like not going to work because obviously you can't do a call center job if you can't speak.
Right.
And I realized that this was not going to be the end all be all of my life here. So I got to figure out something else. So I'm thinking, well, what if I just try to get Ancient DOS Games going again? Because I've got a better computer now. I can look into better software ideas and stuff, and maybe try my own take. Because when I first tried to do Ancient DOS Games, I was thinking about like the popular people, like the Angry Video Game Nerd show and such. So my thinking now was, well, what if I do something that's more me, like not trying to force humor, but just trying to do something more technical.
Right.
So while I had no voice, I started planning ahead, like putting together some assets, putting together some ideas of what games I would cover, how I would structure the show and everything. And then once my voice had come back, I started Ancient DOS Games the way it is now in May. And that's been pretty much what I've been doing for since then. I recently had my 300th episode just a few weeks ago, so
That's pretty awesome, though. I mean, good milestone.
Yeah. We cheated on our first episode. I had a personal friend who was a celebrity of sorts as our first guest. And then technical failure blocked us for 45 minutes. So it was exciting.
Oh boy.
yeah, that was something that really helped to boost my presence at first. Was the first few episodes I made, I only had, whenever you start something new, there's always going to be a very small number of people watching.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get lucky, you're going to hit something that's going to resonate with someone who's a lot more popular than you are.
Yeah,
and what ended up
that's
happening,
always the hope.
What ended up happening is around the end of the year, so around the start of 2011, at least I think that's when it was. I'm just going to quickly, just so I make sure I got this right, I'm just going to quickly look at my episode list, because that's how I'll know that I've got this date right. Yeah, it was right around February of 2011, when I had a significant boost in viewership because one particular Clint Basinger of Lazy Game Reviews caught notice of my show. Now, you have to remember, this is back in 2011. Back then, Clint had only been doing his stuff for a year at that point.
Oh, wow.
Like a little longer than a year.
Right.
So his popularity then was actually still greater than mine is now, but not by much. So I think he was at like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube back then.
That's about 50 times what I currently have.
And a fraction of what he's got now. But the point is that what ended up happening is that I made 2 particular Ancient DOS Games videos. One for the original MechWarrior, and then immediately following, I did one on Earthsiege. Because God. Earthsiege was basically the Dynamics people made the original MechWarrior, But then they decided to move the MechWarrior franchise over to Activision, and the Dynamics guys were like, "Well, we made this engine and stuff. We want to do stuff with it." So they came up with Earthsiege. So the thing is, those two episodes kind of resonated with Clint because he saw the MechWarrior one was like, "Oh, ho hum about it," but then immediately with the Earthsiege one, is like it's just a kick in the right direction, right? So it ended up being like one of his first blog posts on his then new website. And so basically my viewership quadrupled when that happened.
Wow.
And since then we don't collaborate too often because there's usually his audience is definitely different than mine now. It's also he's in the million range now and I'm still at 20,000, but
yeah.
But the thing is that he definitely helped get me off the ground in that sense. And from there, I've been doing various things to try and keep things invigorated. Like with a few years ago, I started doing new kinds of videos on my channel called pro videos and mod videos. The idea being that ADG Pro would be something where I'd go back to a game that I've already covered, but go more in depth into a particular feature, like try to figure stuff out about the game that isn't immediately obvious or that you might have questions about. And then ADG Mod was going back to games I'd covered and looking at modifications for them, or looking at how to make stuff for these games, like just editors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also got a shovelware diggers video series that I've been doing where we just dig up old shovelware from various collections, and occasionally I find a gem in the rough, but most of it is just rough.
Can I backtrack you for half a second because you brought up the MechWarrior games, and I would say honestly, those were like, I got into playing and messing with those games like at the end of junior high, and I still love the original early days releases of those.
Like the very first one or the second one? Because most people remember the second one.
I very, very much remember MechWarrior 2, but yeah, I also used to play BattleTech tabletop. So.
Oh, okay.
See, now I had a bootleg floppy disk of BattleTech, and I got to tell you, I never did figure that damn game out.
Oh yeah, the original BattleTech games were a lot more complex because they were bringing in that whole simulation aspect, like having to travel between star systems and stuff. Whereas MechWarrior 2 was just straight action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had that certain 80s inscrutability, like on the old Ultima games.
Yeah.
You know, where if you it just dumps you into a town somewhere and it's up to you to just figure it out.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, that's
There was documentation, but it was hardcover and like 2 inches thick, so.
Yeah, I never got into the tabletop series for BattleTech because I've always been more into computer games. Like, it's not that I don't like board games, it's that I like board games more than everybody else around me, and you can't play most board games solo. So
Right. Yeah. But no, yeah, a lot of the mechanics actually were somewhat consistent, which is why the BattleTech game was so hard on PC.
Yeah, like that was actually something I investigated in a pro video. Was if you look at the stats for things like the weapons and stuff in MechWarrior 2, they all seem like they're copy pasted from BattleTech, but they definitely don't behave like that.
Yeah, I think it was intended to be that way, but obviously, when you put the game them in a different game context, that completely changes the feel.
Yeah, it's like I investigated it, and the numbers for the actual things going on were completely different from the numbers given in the mech editor.
I think that's the end of my thought there. I just wanted to say that because I was like, I very rarely hear people bring up MechWarrior 2 anymore.
Well, I can bring up just about any old game you can think of. So you might hear a few more as this goes on tonight.
Chris Roberts' first game, Bad Blood. I have it on 5 1/4 inch floppy diskettes in the original box. All right. Well, that covers. You actually managed to cover all of the introductory questions without prompting. So we're gonna step it up into hard mode now and let Adam go at you. So, Adam,
All right.
let him have it.
All right. Well, okay. So before we go more in depth with ancient DOS games, we have yet to mention your second series, side series. Not exactly sure how you designate it, but it's Shovelware Digger.
Yeah, shovelware diggers. Yeah, I did mention it briefly just now, but
Yeah. You said that it was a thing you do, just not
yeah.
Yeah.
the
But,
details.
Just
You know,
elaborate.
and-
Yes, let's expand
Right.
on that.
Okay, so shovelware diggers was something I started in, I think 2016 or 2017. I can't remember which at the moment. But basically, the idea was I had my Patreon support going, and I wanted to come up with something that could be a little more interactive for people at certain tier levels over on Patreon. And so one of the things I remember doing from Ancient DOS games, specifically for my 50th episode, was tried to demonstrate the experience of going through an old shovelware archive, because I have this massive 2,000 games 2 CD collection that I've from like the mid 90s, which is mostly shareware, but you occasionally find a wares copy of something on there that really shouldn't be there, but nobody was checking this stuff.
Oh, you mean the thing we pretend that we never talk about on my channel, right?
Yeah, something like that. So, but the thing is that I wanted to sort of give that experience to other people, but that's kind of a difficult thing to do in 2016, 2017. So, what I came up with was the way the show works is that Patreon supporters at a particular tier level send in a set of selections from the entire directory structure of the disc, which I have posted on my website. And what I do is I basically cycle all the different people who are participating around in a queue and select the 3 that are at the top, and then pick one of their digs, and then dig that up on the show, like without any looking ahead or anything, just looking at it and giving initial impressions and stuff. The show was designed to be really fast to make because it needed to fit within my schedule for doing stuff like Ancient DOS games and everything. So
something with minimal editing.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's currently up to week 268, I believe. So we've dug up a lot of shovelware.
All right, I got to stop you for a second. Adam, you're cross-talking again.
Yeah, pretty badly.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
how about now?
yeah. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it keeps happening, like air or stuff like bubbling around.
I think the microphone is getting caught in the fan.
That
I don't know,
probably
but
might be it. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, let's get back to business.
All right,
Okay.
back to business. Sorry about that.
Well, I pretty much completed my thought there. So next question.
Right. So, what sorts of games do you find in these shovelware digs?
It varies considerably because some of the one thing I should mention is that because shovelware diggers is something that came sort of coming after the fact, if anything ever shows up that I've already covered on Ancient DOS games, like properly, I just omit it from the episode entirely. Like, you don't even realize that it's happened. So that lets us focus more on the obscure stuff that pops up. And most of what it is obscure stuff. Like, a lot of the times in the 80s and 90s, these people were writing this software, and writing software isn't really that hard when you contrast it to trying to get people to play it. So you end up with a lot of these people who have these grandiose ideas, or actually came up with something really decent, but had no idea how to actually get people to download and play it. So that's why it ends up obscure, and then you go to play it nowadays, and it's like, oh, this was actually really decent, but nobody's ever heard of it, and now you can't get the full version because the guy only sold like 15 copies. So
And these are all games from like 25 years ago as well.
it'd be more than that by this point. The CD itself that we're going through were put out in 1995, so the latest stuff on them is from 95. So that would be 27 years.
Oof.
Jeez.
It's been a while.
Uh,
But yeah, some of the stuff that shows up is actually pretty bad. So it's not all good stuff. In fact, most of it is pretty bad stuff. But
I mean, that definitely is a thing that happens. You know,
I mean, 2,000 games. I think some Sturgeon's Law is going to hit that.
well, also the fact that they're not all games. Like we encounter screensavers, we encounter like weird programs that are just simply for databasing sports stuff, like. Or sometimes, or it's really funny though when we hit the things where it's like, how did this even get on the CD? Like, one time I encountered the installer for Flashback, just the installer, none of the data files.
What? That's wild.
And now you can get the game for free on GOG.
Yes, I did notice that.
Oh, I need to get that for Retro Gaming Emporium.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure if it's still free, but, you know, I grabbed it.
Well, it's always a time thing, right? So.
Yeah, it's like 2-3 days. Anyway. So do you ever encounter programs or games that don't work?
Oh yeah, all the time. the installer I just mentioned. But yeah, sometimes we encounter a game where we try to run it and it's like there's something about it that's just not working perfectly or difficult to get emulated properly. And that's the other thing too, is that some of this stuff is so old that it's like there's very specific settings that it wants, especially if it's something that was made by an individual who doesn't have the ability to test their stuff on multiple different systems. So, and by the way, that Flashback giveaway, there's 9 hours left on it right now.
I just claimed it. I know I know what I'm about. I played that game on the Sega Genesis hardcore.
But yeah, so we encounter the whole gamut of stuff on Shovelware Diggers. The only thing we don't encounter is like proper commercial software. Well, actually, no, I take that back because sometimes there's Ware's copies of stuff like from the 80s like that.
Yeah, I think I remember in one episode, like, Prehistoric Man showed up.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was a this didn't show up on Shovelware Diggers, but it showed up in the ADG episode that prompted me to make this series. Is Beetlejuice?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Like the DOS version of Beetlejuice is very much not like the NES one that more people are probably familiar with. The DOS version, it takes place on like a sort of isometric field, and you're basically just trying to. I think you're trying to like score points from like getting ghosts or something while avoiding other things that are roaming around. It's basically just it's kind of like Robotron, but not.
Interesting.
And how many more games do you have in the queue?
See, that's the interesting thing is that because this was something for Patreon supporters to make their selections with, what's ended up happening is we're starting to exhaust the folders that had the more interesting stuff, and the folders that have lots of stuff left are things like card games and board games. So I'm not entirely certain how much longer we're gonna be able to keep that up for.
All right, Varias, you're playing Overwatch too hard.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting it coming and going today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right.
Anyway, moving on.
So if you run out of games on this, compilation, will you seek to track down another one, or will you end the series?
So here's where we're at with that. So I suspect we're going to get up to week 300 at the very least, possibly 350. But the thing is that the only way the series could really go forward after the huge amount of stuff that we've gone through. Like if we try to pull up another old DOS shovelware collection, we're probably going to just hit a whole bunch of the same stuff. So the way to continue the series afterwards would be to dive into Windows 95, Windows 98 stuff, because there's all kinds of shovelware on that side of things. The only trouble is that I'm not really set up to do that kind of stuff. Because to do that properly, I'd need like a whole capture setup. I need a Windows 95 system, which I don't have, nor do I have the space to set that kind of stuff up, because I'm basically working out of a single room in an apartment right now. So I think what's going to end up happening instead, once we hit that limit where it makes sense to close the series down for the current collection we're going through, is to move on to a different kind of show. Because I've got a couple ideas I'm sorting through right now in terms of quick interactive things that I could put in place of shovelware diggers. But that's basically what would happen, is if the series does wind down, I would have something else to put in its place so that there's at least something for Patreon supporters to interact with. So.
Okay. I mean, that does make sense. Like, I'm not sure. Can you give us any insight on what show concepts you have cooking?
Only to the extent that there would be some level of Patreon interaction, so that Patreon supporters at a particular tier level or higher would be able to add their input as to the direction that the show goes. Kind of like how with shovelware diggers right now, those supporters are able to select the different directories for the show that can go into it. So it'd be like that. There'd be a level of interactivity there. But beyond that, I haven't released any details yet. So, mostly because I'm not sure which idea I'm going to go with.
Fair. I mean, I suppose it's better to have too many ideas than to have too little.
You'd say that, but then you'd look at my you look at my folder full of conceptual game documentation that I've been writing since the 90s, and there's like 300 different games in there.
I was gonna say, Adam, haven't you looked at our Dropbox over here at the studio? Good lord.
I have not. But I suppose that is a good segue to something that you wanted to talk about, and indeed, prior to this show getting revived, we were looking to have on my program. That's your game dev career, such as it was.
Yeah.
And you want, and you wanted to wax a bit philosophical about how that's not been going, I believe.
Yeah, right. So one of the interesting things about is something that I've noticed in retrospect from doing game dev stuff in the past and trying to get back into it now, is that I picked the worst time possible to try and get into indie game development.
Oh dear, yeah.
So let me break this down. The 80s, great time to be getting into indie dev, because all the commercial stuff was really expensive, and some people wanted a cheaper alternative, and there wasn't a lot of competition because not a lot of people were writing in games for PC independently. Well, not in the North American market anyways. Like, that was a way more common thing in Europe, but North America, not a lot of people doing that. And also, apologies if that train that's starting to pass comes through on the microphone.
Oh dear.
Let me know if that happens.
Oh no, we're not hearing that.
Okay, so then comes the 90s, and even then in the 90s, early 90s, great time to be independent developing, because now you've got companies like Apogee and Epic Mega Games like showing that independent development can actually produce some really cool stuff.
Commander Keen.
Or freaking Doom. Doom was technically an indie developed game.
That's true. Duke Nukem.
Now that's slightly straying out of that. Slightly, but the point is that was still a good time to get into indie game dev. Late 90s and early 2000s.
Okay, Blake
the
7.
worst time to attempt to get into indie game dev, because this is the point in time now where everybody's focusing so heavily on the graphics of the games, and most indies don't have the skill or the equipment to produce the kind of graphics that these commercial entities have been producing. So you can't compete. And even if you could, how do you sell your games? Because you've got all these modernized systems for selling software, and it's like there's not really a good solution anymore for an indie developer. So late 90s to early 2000s, worst time to get into indie game dev, and that's where I fit in. So yeah, so what I think what was it? So my original claim to fame was Pixel Ships, which I put out in 2000, or was it 2001? No, 2000 was when I originally made it, but I didn't actually get it released until 2001. The original idea behind it was like Pokemon, but as a space shooter. So I put it out for free because I wasn't really I wasn't really sure how to do sound and music for it, and I didn't want to focus too heavily on it because I had like a working game and everything. So I figured I just put it out for free. People can download it if they want to. And then from there, there was a little bit of a hiatus because I ended up getting a job programming math software. So that lasted for a couple of years. And then after that, I tried getting back into making games and came up with Super Minesweeper, which I think sold a grand total of maybe 100 copies. And then Pixel Ships Retro, which was, a more... what I was trying to do with that game was basically a combination of... Basically, I was trying to combine the styles of an Atari 2600 with an NES. And I don't think a lot of people noticed that. And again, this was mid-2000s, so we're still in graphic snob territory for people wanting games, which means it was really difficult to sell anything. So I think over the years I sold a grand total of 200-ish copies of Pixel Ships Retro. So yeah, those didn't work out so well. But the irony is, you go forward in time to 2010, and a new game hits the scene called Minecraft. And that kind of blew the doors open as to indie developers getting more attention again. So, yeah, I was developing games during the worst time to be an independent developer.
Oh, man.
But nowadays, the thing is, I've been trying to get back into making games for a while now. Something I was working on between 2014 and 2016 was a project called Text Mode 2000. The idea being that I basically put out this free program that you'd be able to buy tiny games for that would all run in sort of a faux text mode.
I see.
Excuse me. But that kind of got derailed because I realized I didn't want to be working on that for the rest of my life. So I ended up releasing what I had done of that for free. And that was the last thing I kind of put out. So I've been trying to get back into game development since then. Mostly focusing on using other engines. Like I've been learning the Godot engine, I've been learning the Unreal Engine, avoiding Unity because Unity just makes my head hurt.
See, that's funny because that's the engine I immediately dove into when I started making VTube Avatar.
Well, that's the engine most people use, but it's just because that was one of the first ones to actually make it easy to get into. Like
Right.
that was one of the big challenges for getting into any game engine was the upfront cost.
Yeah.
And Unity didn't have that.
Right. And it actually is surprising that, like, this might be my superpower talking, but it seems to me that it's actually pretty surprising to as far as the ease to get into and start working in relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's just Unity does things in a way that my head doesn't like. So.
Oh yeah, well,
Yeah,
I can also understand and respect that.
Yeah, but more recently, I've been getting into Godot because Godot's got some pretty big power behind it, and it's one of those few engines that's like 100% free, so you never have to pay a dime for it.
Nice.
The only trouble is that it kind of falls apart in some ways in terms of practical usage. Like one of the big issues that's getting solved soon is shader caching, which basically leads to all kinds of little lag spikes everywhere if you don't plan ahead for how to get that solved. But the thing is, actually working around it is not straightforward. So it's like little issues like that which make it a little tricky to use for practical commercial work. But I'm figuring it out, and I've also dipped my toes into Unreal Engine. Unreal is extremely powerful for 3D stuff, but wow, there's a lot of things you have to keep track of. Just to put this in perspective, a typical object you create in Godot is going to have a list of properties, and there's going to be like maybe 100 or so properties to worry about. Most of them are going to have some basic defaults, though, so you don't have to dive too deep into it. An object in Unreal can have like 1,000 properties,
Right.
by default.
And not only do you have to keep track of things like that, but you got to keep track of like your memory overhead and all of that.
Yeah, but you have to do that in any game engine.
Right.
But the thing is it's that Unreal is powerful, but it's slower to produce with because there's so much more stuff to worry about. And plus, it doesn't do 2D as well as Godot. So. But yeah, so that's what I've mostly been doing because I've been working on game documentation as too, just to make sure that I've got something ready to go for when I do actually get back into proper development, like really back into it. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience trying to get back into game dev while not having the time to do it because Ancient DOS games takes up most of my time. So
that was. Yeah, I definitely can follow that. Having to figure out your schedule can be a nightmare.
Yeah, especially when you don't have a circadian rhythm like I do.
Well, welcome to the world of ADHD.
Yep.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure I don't have that, but I have what's referred to as a circadian rhythm disorder. Basically, I do not. My body's sleep-wake cycles are not normal, and very random. To put this in perspective, I went to bed at 2 p.m. today.
Oh, I know. I'm saying that's where our worlds collide.
Yeah, I woke up at 9 p.m. So I've actually got my whole day ahead of me after we're done here.
Indeed.
Yeah, so life's been interesting. And I mean that in the most broadest definition of the word.
Right. All right. Adam, care to redirect?
All right. Well, getting back to ancient DOS games, how has your methodologies, procedures, reporting, all that evolved over 12 years?
Mostly just learning what works and learning what doesn't. When I first started Ancient DOS games, I was trying to riff it, like just have like a general idea of how I was going to go through an episode and just sort of just talking to the mic about whatever comes to mind. And then after a while, I was realizing that wasn't really working that well for me because I was missing points all the time. I was rambling about things. And then I decided, you know what? Let's try scripting an episode. And that happened to be episode 16, which was covering the, what game was it? Dark Forces, Star Wars Dark Forces.
A classic.
And I remember at the time, this was just, I was starting, I hear someone's cat. I was just starting
That's
to,
Tippy.
just starting to, I'm sorry.
Cat sounds like she's being murdered.
Yeah.
That's Tippy. That's our
Okay, I'll try.
that's our fully functional Tom.
Okay, I'll try to focus on my thoughts here. So,
All right, I'm gonna hold
right
it
around
in
that
my mouth.
time, James Rolfe put out the AVGN episode for his revisiting of some of the old games that he covered. And one of those old games he covered was Top Gun on the NES. And during that particular episode, he had a moment where he was trying to land the plane, and the plane just sort of leaves the television and crashes through his window. And then he makes a comment like, if anybody sees that plane, you please let me know. And I figured, because I was about to do my first scripted video, okay, this is a perfect time to do a segue into something weird like that. So halfway through the video, halfway through the episode that I was producing, there's this moment where this sound starts to come into audio, and I'm like reacting like, where is that noise coming from? It cuts to me looking at my computer monitor, and then being surprised as this little pixelized thing starts flying across the room. And I'm looking at the camera like, what the? And I don't elaborate any more on it than that. And I don't think anybody I don't think anybody got the joke, but
Well, now we're all in on it.
yeah. So it's mostly been just a learning experience, just doing things, learning what works, learning what doesn't work, and when something doesn't work, you don't do it again.
Right.
Also improving hardware. Like when I started Ancient DOS games, I was using. The reason it sounds like I'm talking through a really bad webcam in that is because that's literally what I was doing. Is talking through a really bad webcam.
Oh, God.
And then episode 30, I ended up getting a new camcorder, which I noticed had much better audio than my webcam. So I actually started recording my audio with my new camcorder instead. And then that lasted until episode 125, after which I finally got myself a proper microphone for my computer, and then just did it that way since then. So actually, I had to replace that microphone very quickly about a month ago because something really weird happened to it. Because it was like I just recently upgraded my computer. Like, I've got like a brand new CPU and everything, and I plugged my microphone in at had my microphone plugged in, and it was reading it fine with the new configuration and everything. But there was one point where I unplugged it, plugged it back in, and now Windows was telling me it was an advanced audio device as opposed to reading it by name. I'm like, okay, that's weird. I tested it out. It seemed to be working okay.
Uh-huh.
But then when I actually went to record an episode of Shovelware Diggers at one point, I'm noticing that my audio from my voice is horribly desynced with the actual game footage, to the point where it's like it's not even a consistent desync. It's like random. And yet my voice sounded perfectly fine. I'm thinking to myself, okay, is that like a configuration issue? Is there something wrong on the software side? Is it the microphone? Eventually, I figured out it was the microphone. Something went screwy electrically, and even though the mic was functioning, it was having electronic issues.
Well, yeah,
so I ended up.
Mics can be very strange, as Mac and I have had some discussions about. Certain microphones actually install with a latency. Mac's, what was it, 432 that we got?
Yeah, the G432 would not
was updated to work within the G Hub, so it was actually doing a negative sound wave in the ear of whatever you were saying in the microphone.
Yeah, so I could hear myself the whole time, and it was just like, to my ADHD brain, I was just like, no.
Yeah. And it took us a while to
Okay.
figure it out.
Yeah, I don't
But
have
yeah,
this
so I
problem with the
ended
G35 because it's not G Hub enabled.
So yeah, what ended up happening is I bought a replacement, the exact same model of mic, just black instead of silver, and plugged it in. Before I plugged it in though, I took the cable for my new microphone and tried to plug the old microphone in with that cable, and it still showed up as an advanced audio device. I'm like, okay, so it's not the cable. But then I noticed that the new cable, despite being the same microphone just many years later, wasn't as strong. It was like a thinner cable. I'm like, this cable sucks compared to the old one. If it's not the cable, I just use the old cable with the new mic. So I plugged the old cable into the new mic, shows up as its proper designation in Windows. So yeah, microphone was dying.
Wow.
Technology. Can't live without it, can't burn it to the ground either.
Apparently.
Right, and what games have you covered recently?
Well, for my 300th episode, I covered Tomb Raider. Like, that was a game that I think a lot of people don't remember is a DOS game. Because
Because it got the
was,
PlayStation release.
Yeah, you had the PlayStation versions, Saturn versions, and on the PC, it was like it wasn't released initially with lots of hardware acceleration features, but it kind of went that way because eventually they had the gold release a year later, which had
3DFX.
all these different hardware acceleration supports on PC, which was not common at that time. I think that's
when we got 3DFX and OpenGL support.
Yeah. Oh well, not so much OpenGL. OpenGL was still kind of rough on the PC side of things because that was a really advanced sort of thing way back then. So not a lot of video cards really supported it that well. The video card manufacturers wanted to come up with their own APIs because they wanted stuff that was more optimized to do like high performance graphics and stuff. Like OpenGL made more sense for compatibility. It just didn't make sense for performance back then. But nowadays we've got Vulkan. It's like OpenGL. What's that? Which I'm joking. I was mentioning Godot earlier. Godot still uses OpenGL. It's switching to Vulkan for 4.0 later on, but that's still quite a ways away. So, but yeah. So, Tomb Raider was a recent one. What other ones did I do recently? So before Tomb Raider, I covered Helios and Helios 2, which were some indie games from the mid-90s, where apparently it's supposed to be Alien software, but maybe not, and maybe it is. It depends on if you believe the story about the guy who made quote-unquote the game, finding it after, like, this alien encounter thing. There's a whole backstory to it it's hard to believe, but at the same time, it's like,
Right.
And then before that, I did Chex Quest. That was a game I'd actually never played before.
I mean, you kind of had to be a certain age to really play Chex Quest, I think.
But that's the thing is, I was that age and I liked Chex. So how did I not end up with this game?
Did you just not buy any boxes of it, or did your parents not buy any boxes of it when they were giving it away with the cereal?
Well, to be fair, the promotion didn't last that long because they went through that cereal fast. From the research I did, the Chex Quest cereal or the Chex cereal sales quadrupled during the length of that promotion. So,
well, I can see why. Chex Quest. Yeah, it's a total conversion of Doom, but it's a meaty package for a cereal giveaway.
Yeah. You say total conversion, but really it's only 5 levels, and then some of the Ultimate Doom stuff is actually still there. You could use command line parameters to break yourself into it. The only problem is that because of all the stuff that's been converted, it doesn't exactly run properly. But it's there. Like, yeah, it's kind of a weird case in that event. And then before that, I covered Beneath a Steel Sky. So that's a very, very unusual adventure game because it's almost like there's a clash of two different tones to that game. There's a clash of a really serious tone with a really comedic tone.
Yeah,
And
I played Beneath a Steel Sky. It's a weird game.
yeah. And then before that, I finally covered Depth Dwellers. Oh, jeez. Depth Dwellers was it was one of those indie first-person shooters you couldn't get away from because I mentioned before how most indie developers, they knew how to make software. They just didn't have a clue about how to promote it. This was kind of almost the opposite. A guy who didn't exactly know how to make games, even though he was really good with the technology, but was really good at promoting it. So Depth Dwellers ended up being like, you found it on numerous shareware compilations. It was frequently bundled with VR, with the early VR stuff, because the guy was trying to push his own VR product and also put anaglyph support into the game as well. The game doesn't deserve any of that. It's not that good. It's painfully average.
Never played it, so I couldn't speak to it. I'm like, anyway, so we are running low on time, so I'll end things here by asking, I'm not sure if you can go into this, but what do you have upcoming for Ancient DOS games?
I really don't know. I just sort of go with the flow. I sometimes plan my episodes. I generally only plan my episodes like a few in advance, and other than that, it's like I just have lists of like review requests, games that have been sent to me, ideas that I've come up with for the pro videos and the mod videos and the fillers. So I just sort of just pick what seems like it'll work. Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, that's sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Professionally unprofessional, as always.
Indeed.
Kris, I really appreciate you coming and talking to us today, and keep us appraised on what's going on with your various endeavors. I'm very interested in hearing what you've got coming up next as it evolves.
Yep, thanks for having me on. I don't know how well I'll be able to keep you apprised of things. I'm usually bad at that all the time, but
well, you can send a tweet at me or Adam, and
yeah, that works.
And let us know if you've got something new coming down the pike, because we can always have you back and explore new avenues.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, of course, we got the entertainment segment coming up next, so you're, of course, welcome to join us if you have any thoughts or interesting commentary on anything that crops up during the discussion. But
if I do, I will chime in.
All right. But that was Kris Asick, and be sure to check out his channel. His website is pixelmusment.com, and you can see links to all of his various programming there. All right, Adam, Kevin, regale me with the entertainment news.
All right. So first, we'll be starting with Mystery Science Theater 3000. Because Joel's returning to riffing.
Oh.
Yeah, he was. We all know he's supposed to be a part of the end of the season holiday special, but in fact, he's actually going to be doing an episode by himself. Which premieres this Friday night.
Mm-hmm. I forget, what movie is he covering?
No, that's the wrong time. It's supposed to be next Sunday.
AD.
And yeah, I know the joke there. Let me look it up here.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Demon Squad. That's it.
Can't say I'm familiar with that one, but then again,
Yeah, it's a 2019. It's actually a 2019 movie, which is pretty interesting in its own right.
I guess, but ever since the revival, and even back in like the late Sci-Fi Channel era, they weren't that gun shy about doing modern films. Like one of my favorite episodes of MST3K ever, Future War, was like only a few years old when they riffed on it.
That's true.
Remember, a movie doesn't have to be old to be bad.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, ye gods, no! Like.
Yeah.
And they really stepped that up during like the Netflix seasons. Even also getting into like popular stuff because
Yeah.
like I remember with the Gauntlet they covered both Mac and Me, which was decidedly not obscure. Like it was, I believe it was a failure at the box office, but I also remember that being pushed a lot as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And and for fuck's sakes, they had an Asylum movie in that Gauntlet. Maybe not very memorable because it wasn't Sharknado, but it's an Asylum film, not exactly obscure. So whatever defined rules on MST3K projects have been thrown out long ago, and they did exist at various points. Like early sci-fi, they could only do sci-fi stuff, but that changed.
Because otherwise it's, not relevant.
Yeah, but I know there's great anticipation for Joel to return because I don't think he's done a riff since Mitchell.
No. No. And I mean, in fact, the promo notes that it's going to be his first riff since 1993, which of course was when Mitchell aired. So. Yeah.
Which is actually kind of concerning, if I'm being honest, because, he hasn't done this in. I guess that's technically not true because that ignores cinematic Titanic.
And also, he did I think one of the live tours as well. So
yeah, but I get where they're coming from. It's his first MSD3K riffing project since Mitchell, which once again that's almost 30 years ago.
1993. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like he's just coming back to riffing out of nowhere. I mean, he's done riffing projects in the past, like decade, 15 years. So
yeah. So
way to make me feel old.
Time is an ever-flowing river.
Yeah.
1993. I was 16.
Yeah.
I was one. Live with it.
I was 2.
Well, now you can add 29 to that.
Yeah. I
guess I would have been 7 or 8. 7?
Yeah. I was XD years old.
Oh my god.
Anyway.
But yeah. I gotta admit personally, I'm not particularly interested in seeing Joel return to the jumpsuit, if only because he's not the guy I grew up with, so to speak. I got into MST3K in the Mike years.
The Mike years, yeah.
Yeah, and of course there's controversy surrounding him right now. Apparently, why did everybody go dead? Hello? Hello.
You know, we'll see how it goes.
So
Yeah,
none of what you just said for the last 3 minutes has been broadcast. I started to bring it when you brought up Mike Nelson. I started to bring up the recent controversy, and suddenly various aspects of my internet were resetting.
Oh no.
No, it was literally just Discord.
Okay.
Yeah.
So none of what you said for the last 2 minutes has been heard.
Well,
good.
Yeah, I was starting to bring up the tangential controversy with Mike Nelson, and I'm like, hello, I'm alone.
Boof. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Then you floated off into space.
Yes. Did anyone happen to catch the last thing I said on air?
No, you just died out and then went nowhere and then came back. So.
All right. So did you actually hear me say the thing about Mike Nelson?
No.
Okay.
Negative.
All right.
Yeah.
So whatever you've been saying for the last 2 minutes has been lost. So let's go back a step here.
Do you want to go back a step, or do we just want to move on?
Well, get into the controversy. We didn't cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have all the details on it. I believe you guys are probably a little more informed on this, but so the last thing you said before we cut was a lot of people don't think of Joel first because Mike Nelson spent so much time on the show, and that was your first experience with MST3K. And then I jumped in and said, yeah, and it's especially prescient because of the fact that he is currently surrounded with controversy, although not directly related to him.
Yeah, not as much anymore. I mean, I know what you're talking about, that bit with that podcast, but
right.
Yeah.
That's pretty much at this point been mostly settled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Still fuck Doug to nipple.
Yeah, it's still messed up. But
never say that enough.
Yeah, it's still messed up, but it's less overwhelming than it was when it was going on.
Yeah,
which I think was a year, 2 years ago, 1 year, last year, 2 years ago.
It's something that's been basically memory hold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's been memory hold mostly because of the time that's elapsed since it blew up. So.
Yeah. Plus, it's a daily thing these days.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so moving on. Guess what defines a failure? Like,
what is a man?
What is a man?
Actually,
yeah.
It's kind of actually in that same vein because I'm talking about the movie Lightyear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because, this is definitely one of those cases where, what is a bomb? And I guess for the record, Lightyear didn't bomb, but it also, quote unquote, underperformed.
Yeah.
While still racking up the highest animated gross in quite some time.
I mean, it's probably the highest grossing animated movie that's fully animated and not half since the pandemic, at least.
Right. It raked in about $50 million.
Yeah, but at the same time, it fell, I think it was $6-7 million short behind second week Jurassic World.
Right, and it's also behind Top Gun Maverick. Like,
Did it finish third or did it finish second?
I definitely remember Top Gun Maverick coming up because that movie is
Yeah,
been doing gangbusters.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like,
Once again,
Yeah.
in spite of the controversy.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, which is a whole other story that's it may well come back to bite Paramount, but you know.
Well, as I was talking about it with Varias, I likened it to the Art Buchwald coming to America situation in the late 80s, early 90s, because it's basically literally the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Article inspires a movie. The production company gets caught red-handed, not doing their due diligence and things that they're supposed to be doing. And their response to it is all, well, fuck you.
Yeah, well,
we can do what we want.
Yeah, so we should probably talk about what exactly has happened here. For those that don't know, the original Top Gun back in 1987 was actually based on an article that was written in 1983 that Paramount quickly swiped up the rights to.
It's a little more nuanced than that. It's that the article inspired them to want to write a movie. All of the elements in the movie are completely fictional creations of its writer. However, they made a point of using the article as their primary research for what Top Gun is. So as a preventative measure, they bought the rights to the article because they couldn't divorce what they were doing from their inspiration from the article. Certain activities described in the article made it into the movie.
Well, it's not just that, and Mac and I were actually looking at the original article, which was published with photos, and that was the other part of this, was like some of the aerial acrobatics are shown in photographs in the article itself.
Right.
From the actual Top Gun pilot.
So while the story of Top Gun is completely original, having nothing to do with the article, various elements that cannot be divorced from that article that were inspirational did make it into the film, a significant enough portion that somebody's owed something.
Mm-hmm.
Proceed.
Well,
as you were getting to the nuanced part, Mac, or would you like me to fill this in real quick so that we can
go ahead
have
and
Kevin
go ahead and fill that in. So,
the nuanced question is, because Top Gun Maverick is based solely off of the story of Top Gun and not the article, is it still technically a derivative work of the licensed article, which the license expired several years ago?
Right.
That's the nuanced question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the one thing that makes this case a little different than the Coming to America situation. I just thought it was ironic that that Paramount Pictures decided, after losing $92 million to Art Buchwald and his estate,
that they would do it again.
They would do it again. Yeah.
Now, because the license. This is about the whole, rights elapse after 35 years, back to the creators, and of course the writer of the article has deceased, but his family is involved in this. And
they did assert creation rights. They did assert creation rights to the article, which they are allowed to do.
Yes, and the license elapsed just about a couple of months before the original release date of Top Gun Maverick, because remember, this was supposed to come out in the summer of 2020, but, well, you know what happened.
2020 happened.
Yeah.
Yes, but then a little virus came along and pushed it and Bond back.
Along Came a Virus sounds like an Alex Cross novel.
Yes, it does.
I mean, when I first started at the AMC, when I came in the break room, there were cups with they were actually selling.
Christ, Kevin, your gain just went way the fuck up.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, how do I sound now?
Okay.
Same.
Was
it me?
It doesn't sound any different to me. I think that's a Discord problem.
Okay, I think I found the problem. Sorry, it was on my end.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, but
Sorry,
Yeah,
that was
one of-
just I was afraid that the volume was going to blow people out.
I swear to
Yeah,
God,
okay.
I swear to God, Kevin, we're going to let you get to the point at some,
I
some
know.
juncture.
I know it's not terrible. I mean,
We're going to
like,
let you get there. I promise.
yeah, but I know. But yeah, when I first got to AMC, they were actually selling cups with Top Gun on it
Wow.
from its original release date, which of course got pushed back because it had literally just reopened after shutting down for a couple of months and was doing weekend only. And the cups they were selling was Top Gun cups. So
The initial release date was actually going to be December 23rd, 2019, and then they pushed it back to summer of 2020, and then they pushed it back, and pushed it back, and pushed it back, and pushed it back.
Yeah, the summer 2020 was the one I came in with because that was probably what was going to happen, and then, well, the virus still wasn't really going away, so
Lockdown.
Yes, lockdown indeed. But yeah, so the thing is going to be whether Paramount can convince everybody that they did just enough to kind of squeak out away from the rights, which is going to be a very tall task because these are pretty much the same characters, the same situations of the original movie, which kind of sort of was based upon that article. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's a Top Gun sequel with completely new characters. I mean, because that probably wouldn't be making the money that it's making.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to be clear, the article writer did not. I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. But the article writer did not create the characters or the scenario
Right.
or the story of the movie Top Gun.
Mm-hmm.
It was simply that they really didn't do any other research on Top Gun other than using the article, and then they did, and then they incorporated very specific acts by real naval aviators that were documented in said article. And they integrated that into the movie. So that's where the rights issue lies is could they have made this movie without the article? Absolutely. Did they want to? Probably not.
No, not making $500 million. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not making a Top Gun. Never. In fact, you probably wouldn't be making this movie to begin with.
Yeah.
Like you ain't getting no.
I was talking about the original. I was talking about the original Top Gun for which the rights were originally procured.
Yeah.
But it also applies to this one as well. And so the question is.
I mean the sequel especially because
The question is how much.
Yeah. Yeah, but the
question is how derivative the sequel is of the original work, and that's the matter of contention, and Paramount seems to be firmly entrenched into the FU category. They believe they're negotiating from the position of fuck you.
Yeah, but
that's not a good look. It's not a good look.
No, it's not. No. And the fact of the matter is that if you look at what the sequel is, I mean, it very much is heavily connecting to the original while trying to be a new thing, but at the same time,
right?
But
that doesn't. But that's what I'm saying is that doesn't matter. That's not the part at issue here.
Yeah.
It's anyway. Go on.
But anyway, I think we've said enough about the statement here, so I think we should move on to.
Do we have one last topic so we can end on a positive note?
Yeah.
Let's see. Sonic the Hedgehog has become the greatest drawing video game movie of all time, or Sonic the Hedgehog 2 specifically.
And UE Bowl wasn't anywhere near it.
Huh.
Yes.
made $400 million, which is about 100 more than the original got, which of course the original came out just as the pandemic hit.
That's impressive.
That was actually the last movie I saw in theaters before the pandemic was Sonic the Hedgehog.
Probably for a lot of people.
I wanted to go see that movie on general principle, just because of the fact that they actually listened to the fans and remade the movie. I mean, that's unheard of.
The original CG Sonic still haunts my nightmares.
And the footage exists, and it is.
I know.
It is available for your perusal.
No thanks, because there's not enough alcohol to get that shit out of my brain.
I don't think there's enough.
And he's become senior card gauge somehow.
Yeah.
Oh no.
That really is that basically is the character archetype, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
As seen as in Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I bet. He's pretty much literally Senor Card Gauge.
Oh Lord.
Dear God.
God has nothing when it comes to Sonic.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I think that we're good
I think,
for this
yeah,
week.
I think,
All
yeah,
right,
I think
well,
we're pretty good.
That's it for this episode. Again, thanks to Kris Asick, our guest, for dropping by and spending some time with us.
Thanks again for having me.
And let's see. Next week we have Magnus Jansen of Nuttery Entertainment. Adam, you're going to have to explain this one to me.
Probably Janssen,
Okay.
by the way.
I don't recall him correcting us. Like,
That's true. I know. I don't think it came up, but I was still just guessing since he's actually Swedish.
right. Right. So, Magnus was a recent guest on my Fragments of Silicon show,
Okay.
where we talked about the game Whiskey and Zombies. But as it
Nice.
yes. But as it turns out, the Nuttery or Nuttery Entertainment, it's interchangeable because according to Magnus himself, who is the CEO of this company, they have not picked a lane yet. But they are an indie animation studio as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're working on a couple of animated projects like Harken Super Baraken, God, what was it? That's right, a animated adaptation of Whiskey and Zombies. I think there's a few others in there, but yeah. So after the interview about the game, I invited him to this program to talk about his animation projects, and he said yes, which was a bit surprising because, he's in Sweden.
Right.
But he said the time differential shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully that's because, I think he said he has a daughter, and he's, up at 5 a.m. anyway.
Okay. Hey,
Yeah.
that's a good
So,
call.
So, that's what we're talking about next week.
All right. That actually
Fingers
sounds.
crossed.
I got my fingers crossed. I'm setting up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to set up character actor Paul Sieber for the following week. He worked with us on a project, and of course he's huge in Star Trek fandom. He's kind of a big deal. He played Lieutenant Commander Henry Preston on Starship Farragut, as well as appearing as numerous extra and guest starring characters on Star Trek New Voyages, aka Phase 2. So I'm going to be pretty thrilled to try to book him as soon as possible, and I will let everybody know how that works out before next week's broadcast. So
Okay.
a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
And of course, don't forget to join me tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific for more skullduggery in Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. I'm trying not to fail so much so this doesn't become a funeral dirge. After blazing through Final Fantasy IV, the original from the PlayStation Portable Complete Collection, and then making Interlude look easy, the After Years has proven to be quite a challenge. So I'm looking forward to finally beating that and revealing all there is to reveal in that. And that will generally bring our Twitch week to a conclusion. Of course, on Saturday, Varias and I will be returning to Overwatch, probably at 4 p.m., even though I was being kind of a dick about it on Monday. We'll be a little earlier, but it will only be a 2-hour session, so from 4 to 6, and that will be simulcast on her channel, twitch.tv/Varias, and it will also be on my Trovo channel, trovo.live/MacPaladin, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. Palladino. So that's it for our broadcast this week. On behalf of myself and the crew at Moonhawk Studios Presents, thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, kids.